We are always faced with choices, all the time. And that can be pretty overwhelming, so many of us avoid making choices, but that is still another form of choice. And that's an idea I began to think of in the context of lockdown, because lockdown is a great excuse to delay making a choice, specifically with regard to ourselves, who we are, how we live our lives. And also, is that really wrong? Let me tell you a story, or rather a backstory, really. In my teenage years, I kept trying and failing to change the exact same things about myself. I wanted to finally fit in. I never really conquered that. To be normal, to create a different life and a different self. But I always managed to find a perfect reason why I wasn't ready at the time. So I kept delaying that change. Every time I was at a certain endpoint, like the end of middle school or high school, I said the same thing. I said, this time would be different. Once I'm in a new environment, X and Y will change, and I will become this and that, and everything will be just right. But, well, it never was. And eventually I had to face it. I did not change. Or I did, of course I did, but not in the ways I wanted to for many years. The thing is, I didn't actually want to change. I just thought I had to, because the way I was wrong somehow. And for years and years on end, I disregarded my natural tendencies because I wanted to be someone else. And as a result, I both was and wasn't myself. I was myself because I couldn't find it in me to change, but I also wasn't myself because I hated myself. And you can't really be yourself and hate yourself because that hatred is always disruptive. And I created a hell for myself because I lived in this perpetual loop of I'll change when I go to high school or I'll change when I go to college. Eventually, I finally started to listen to myself, to what I truly wanted and who I truly was. And I began to respect that. And only then my life started to get gradually better. But it made me think of how lockdown is the perfect excuse to delay doing something, to delay changing, to delay making a choice. But this mindset is largely false, because we can't really trust our future selves. And sometimes we may use something like lockdown as an excuse, because we're either not ready for a change that needs to be made, or we don't really want to change, we just think we should. So of course, sometimes we genuinely want to and need to change. And then we might try to unpick why we procrastinate like that. So if you do relate to this self-sabotage kind of thing, it might be beneficial to explore that. But also there's another side of this. Sometimes waiting can be good. Maybe lockdown truly is stopping you from doing certain things, and it's not just an excuse. And in that case, you can see waiting not as delay, but rather as patience. The road to change is long, and sometimes procrastination can be a virtue. Maybe you do need this time to reflect, to wait, to examine if what you want to do is something you truly want to do. But in this video, I want to focus more on why we don't always need to change. Because it can be exhausting to always anticipate changing, to always find something in ourselves that doesn't work and that needs to be fixed. It took me a while to realize that I really don't have to obsessively look for things I need to change about myself. I'm fine as I am. Not perfect, I'll never be perfect. I can improve in thousands different ways, but my life is already valuable as it is, and so am I. And I don't need a post-lockdown illusory fantasy of a future to keep me calm. There was a study in which they tried to analyze how your perceptions of your future self affect your future. And they expected that seeing your future self as better than your present would make the most impact. But actually, the people whose future ended up being the brightest were the ones who expected to stay the same as their present selves. And maybe it's because these people actually accepted themselves as they were, and they didn't feel the need to desperately change themselves for the better. Of course, they would still change. Everyone changes over time, but it would happen naturally. And that shows how important accepting your present self is. We are expected to always move forward, always grow, always get better. But these things often happen by themselves if we focus on just living our lives the best we can and to find value in what we're doing. Another problem here is that we tend to imagine a completely different future self that we will become someday. And if we do, we automatically become disconnected from that self because it's outside of us, and then it's even harder to become it. And that's why I think it's a wrong mindset to have if you want to change, because the root of it lies in thinking that we are somehow wrong. So that is certainly an important question. Why do you want to change? Is it because you truly want it, or do you think you should change? I do think that living in lockdown could potentially amplify feelings of inadequacy in certain cases, because you were in the middle of living your life, but then suddenly you had to stop, even if only for a while, even if only somewhat. And you had all this time and space to see your life from a distance. You got a chance to analyze it and see all that could potentially be changed. But then, realizing that a change could be made, you might have begun to freak out and say, okay, I'll make that change after lockdown ends. But maybe we could see this pause and this self-analysis period not as an opportunity to pick out the reasons why we're disappointed with ourselves, but rather as a period of self-discovery. In psychology, there's the idea of a self-concept, which means the way you see yourself. And maybe in lockdown, you realize that the way you saw yourself so far does not align with who you really are. And that might have caused some discomfort. Or maybe you changed in lockdown too. And after it ends, you will need different things from life. Either way, by discovering new things about yourself that you think may be somehow wrong, it is easy to succumb to that mindset of, oh, I'll change when the world starts working again. But instead, ask yourself, maybe lockdown did uncover certain things about you that don't need to change. Maybe it's okay that you're different from who you thought you were. I used to think there was a certain type of person inside of me, and that I just needed to leave my toxic environment to become it. But really, I was the toxic one. And even now, you may think lockdown is stopping you, but you may as well be the one stopping yourself, mainly through thinking you're wrong as you are. You may not be exactly who you want to be, but we're never exactly who we want to be. Sometimes we like the idea of being someone, but we would never enjoy actually experiencing being that someone. And this doesn't have to be bad. On the contrary, it can be liberating. You can be anything, yes, but that doesn't mean you should. That doesn't mean you would be happy being anything. Sometimes it's best if you stay as you are and change and grow, of course, but without forcing. Are you guilty of the I'll change when X or Y happens thinking? Is there a chance that you don't actually have to change, you only think you do? Some food for thought, I suppose. Everyone will have a different answer. And if you enjoyed the video, do consider liking it and possibly subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you for your time.